So the shine is up to me, and that is AEW Dynamite this week. First of all, I wanted to say I can't remember the name of the venue, and I feel so bad about it that they were at from Cincinnati. But this venue was awesome. It was great to see them go to another like cool, unique looking venue. Like they should be searching. I was talking about it on with somebody on Blue Sky the other day. If they're not going to be able to fill like a medium-sized arena to capacity, go to these smaller, weird, unique venues. Like I love the Manhattan Center. I've been to, I've seen, what was it? I saw an ROH show at the Hammerstein Ballroom, and it's a great venue. I love old, weirdly, weird venues like that with interesting architecture and stuff like that. Go to those places because it not only makes your show look different, it not only makes your show louder because the smaller building with a packed house will make it seem louder and more interactive and gives it that indie feel, but all that the good part of the indie feel, not the bad part of the indie feel. But also, uh, if you can't compete with the 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 production values, the least you can do is from a visual standpoint of what you can put on the screen, make yourself stand out by going to the cool looking venues, the smaller ones, but the cool looking ones. Like their upper decks were like it was like two floors, kind of like the Manhattan Center was with like their multiple floors, but like there was like a cage almost like around it as a barricade. I don't know. It looked. I don't know how to describe it except that it looks rad and that I want to go there. If I'm ever in Cincinnati, I want to see some kind of show there because that venue rocked. So shout out to them for finding that place and for that place for being that place. Um, Show opened up with Kenny Omega versus Brian Cage. Brian Cage is underrated. I know we say that about a lot of guys, and especially in AEW, where like everybody seems to be super duper talented. But like Brian Cage is a guy who probably, if he wasn't like 5'11", he probably would have been called to WWE and pushed like as a mega star simply on the fact that he was a body guy. But he can also wrestle really, really well and is super impressive in all the things that he does. Perfect like opening opponent for Kenny in his first match back in AEW. And of course, he had a great match with Gabe Kidd at Wrestle Kingdom, or not Wrestle Kingdom, Wrestle Dynasty.
Yeah.
But this was this was a different match. It wasn't to that level. Kenny always kind of goes into a different gear when he's in Japan, but uh, like this, I mean, this was great. It told a great story. There were shenanigans, sure, but I mean, I thought like the big spot of the match was like right before break when they he Cage press slammed Omega onto the announce table, and they sold the table not breaking it. Oh, it's a solid oak table, so it's like okay, all right, I'll buy in. But like the point of it was for it to not break so that it would be more damaging to Omega's stomach, which they worked the whole match. He sold it the whole match. It was good. It was probably about what 12 minutes or so, 12, 13
Yeah.
minutes. Good stuff. I don't think Cage looked out of his element. I don't think Cage looked like you knew that Omega wasn't going to win, or wasn't going to lose in his comeback match. But Cage never looked weak,
No.
and I think that's important. If you want to give a guy a gimme match, you put him against like you put him against somebody who's a known lights observer, let's say. Uh, but I mean, Brian Cage is not that. He and we'll find out later during the hot tag that he hasn't lost any momentum. They're still building him in the tag division. This is good. This is a great opener. Afterwards, the Callis family comes down, and Will Ospreay comes out to even things out when Fletcher and uh, pardon me, Archer come down. But then Takeshita shows up and he tips the balance, and so And it was great too because Callis gets some shots on the way out, and yes, I think it was Fletcher who pulled him off. It's like, no, come on, we beat him up for now. Let's go and regroup. But yeah, Osprey and Omega kind of give looks to each other and stuff like that. It's like, okay, this is gonna happen. We're gonna get this amazing mega tag team, at least for a little while against the Don Callis family, and I am here for it because I believe that Will Ospreay is the best currently working full time wrestler, and Kenny Omega is certainly in that conversation as well. Then you've got the talent in the Don Callis family. I think people forget how good individually each one of those guys are because they're associated with Don Callis, and he's a heat electromagnet. So but every single one of those guys in that stable is a stud. Like every single one of them. Yeah. So we're gonna get some really good wrestling out of this feud. So even though, yes, you're picking up right where you left off over a year ago when Kenny had to go out due to diverticulitis. Yes, we're just continuing this thing with Osprey and Fletcher. But you know what? The matches are going to be incredible. I'm here for it. Love it. So other stuff that I liked. The Hurt Syndicate. Oh yeah, MVP came back, and he looks as good as he ever did, and it was great. I gotta say, for being up against Mark Briscoe and the World Tag Team Champions, it's not to say that Private Party and Mark Briscoe didn't put in the work, but they got massacred by the Hurt Syndicate in this match. They got and you know what? I'm not necessarily against that because if you're going to be hot-shotting this tag team into contention right away, you need to make them look credible. And it doesn't do MVP any harm to get involved in a match like this as a wrestler, because then it informs his manager work. Oh, this is a guy you really, this isn't just a guy who pulls hair behind the, and trips up a guy behind his back. This is a guy who, if you're on the outside with him and the referee's not looking, could really mess you up.
Yeah.
And there's not really that many managers, especially not in this era, that you can really say that about. Don't get me wrong, I love your Bobby Heenans, I love your Paul Heymans and stuff like that, but they were never physically imposing.
No.
MVP is physically imposing. So a match like this goes to add that little extra wrinkle when he's in the manager role in future matches, where it's you don't want to be on the outside with MVP. Mm-hmm. That's a bad place to be. It's not an annoying place to be. It's a dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
So I thought that this match served multiple ends, and I like when matches serve multiple ends like that because it means it's paying attention to the details. So yeah, the match itself was nothing it was short. It wasn't, it got a commercial break, but it was pretty short. It didn't, I thought honestly, I thought it served to really put over the Hurt Syndicate, and that's not a bad thing. I do hope that they lose to Private Party, at least in their first match, just to give Private Party a little bit longer reign and to put them, if they beat them, at least, if it's not too fluky, it still puts Private Party in the place in the hierarchy that they should be, and not just as a bunch of guys that got ragdolled, guys that were lucky to be there. So I wouldn't give the belts to the Hurt Syndicate immediately. I do think that it's inevitable, though.
Yeah.
I think with this kind of booking, you kind of have to. It's in the cards. I don't know how quick it'll be. It's coming, though.
Yeah, pretty obvious.
Oh, I forgot about Ricochet came out earlier, and he gives clips of his attack on Swerve and blah, blah, blah. And, he did the meme thing where he looked at the camera and he pointed behind him. That was brought up on Blue Sky. Like, oh my God, you did the meme thing. And I don't want to praise Ricochet for reasons we already discussed last week, but I will praise Prince Nana for coming out. Swerve's music hits and Ricochet's all bug-eyed, looking at the ramp, seeing it, waiting for him to come out. But Nana comes behind him with the chair, and times it perfectly to the beat of the song, hits him with the back in the chair, and then does the dance. Like
I
Prince
laughed
Nana,
so hard. I laughed
it,
so hard at this.
he's the best.
I
Protect
love it.
Prince Nana at all costs.
Right?
I loved him ever since he was with the Embassy in Ring of Honor, the original incarnation of it. I thought he was great in that role, and he's somehow gotten, just even better. Like, he was probably lucky to get hired when they bought ROH, because I don't think he was even working with ROH at the time. I think
I'm not sure.
I think Tony just liked him and liked the Embassy, and so he brought him back in, and it turns out to be one of his best hires. Like, the dude is consistently entertaining every time he shows up. Love Prince Nana, and then that just serves to set up Swerve. He's got that big old chain again, and he looked like he was gonna absolutely destroy Ricochet, but he gets out of the way right away. I thought that was effective. Ricochet got a ton of heat. Nana got a ton of cheers. Swerve got a ton of cheers. People are looking forward to Ricochet getting his,
Yeah.
and that's really all you want, right? If
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, um, all right. So I'll skip over this for a minute and we'll come back to it. But the part that I didn't like was up next.
I know what you're
That
talking
being said, yeah.
about.
That being said, I was really looking forward to Hook versus Christian Cage. Um, and it was not what I wanted. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible. But because of, we'll come back to my complaints about it at the end of this segment. But what I did like about it was that Hook was pretty much just whooping Cage. Christian
Yeah.
Christian was getting the scalded dog treatment, and like I loved that. Especially, he's so smart and he's been around so long. Christian Cage knows exactly what he's doing, and he's so selfless in there. And he always has been, really. But, like, especially at this stage of his career, he should be selfless, and he should be letting the younger talent just whoop him, just absolutely destroy him, get that heat on him. And then, sure, yeah, the win was by DQ. Like, Hook dives, gets the red rum in the center of the ring. But, like, like, there was all sorts of uh what's his face patriarchy shenanigans that just caused the DQ. It was, it was what it was. They don't do DQs often, but if you're, in AEW, and that's what a lot of people like about AEW, but if you're going to do one, do it with the guy that people already hate so that they can put the heat on him instead of the decision.
Yeah.
And then patriarchy looked like they're gonna, because Shibata was there too on the outside trying to do his best to hold off traffic, but he couldn't quite make up the numbers. They took him out, and then it looked like they're gonna give Hook a concerto, and then Samoa Joe comes back. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, let's go, baby! Samoa Joe is finally back after way too long. He wasn't even injured. They just didn't I mean, he went off to film something, right? Like,
Yeah. He was filming
and
for metal.
I think, I mean, that shoot couldn't have been for that long. So they were probably just waiting to pull the trigger on the right point in the storyline to come back. Don't know why he's not going after Jericho, the guy who put him through a wall with a freaking forklift. But
Here's the guys trying to kill his paycheck.
yeah. So I mean, but I mean, I'm glad that this, Samoa Joe and his murder associates are back together.
Yeah.
I need them to have a name though. I need that stable to come up with a name. Like, they should be the Nation of Violence, but the renewed Nation of Violence. But I'm pretty sure TNA still owns that name, so they probably would have to work something out with them, which would be probably really difficult now that they have signed a
Associates.
multi-year deal with WWE partnership, which means that TNA, sorry guys, is finally gonna die.
I don't know. I still don't know they're gonna
I
die.
mean, they killed the Brit rest scene. They killed Evolve. Like, that's what they do. Like, they co-opt people. They grab their best guys. It's just a version of what Vince did in the 80s. Gobble up all their best talent without really compensating those territories for their losses, and then just left them to die.
Yeah.
So I mean, this isn't out of character. This is who they are. Um, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. Uh, the one that I really wanted to see though was up next. The one that I was waiting all really 3 weeks to see was the women's casino gauntlet. And with the exception of the length, which you didn't get enough of,
No.
the match itself still delivered though. Like with the women who were in it, they probably were upset about the time as we were, but they were determined to maximize their minutes, and I think they did a really really good job. Chris Statlander came out as number one. Immediately, they put her up against Jamie Hayter, number two. But although I was really disappointed because like they didn't immediately start just destroying each other. Like you got the two women in your division that you up to this point had put over as the most powerful women in your division, and they're doing headlocks. Like why? Like no, just no. Go after each other. Yeah, go for the quick pins. Sure, that's the gimmick of the match. You got to try and get in while you can. But like, I don't know. Like, what's the deal, man? Like, why are you not trying to destroy each other? And then out comes Megan Bain at number three, who I guess has done some AEW stints, but like some dates before, but in years past. But I don't really remember her. Sorry. My buddy George says that she's Joey Janela's girlfriend. Uh, she's huge. She's enormous. She's tall. She's statuesque. She's got a great presentation with like the Valkyrie thing going on. Like her presentation was awesome.
Yeah.
Wasn't super impressed with her in the ring. But maybe it was just the moment, and maybe it's just because she was probably in the ring with a bunch of ladies that she hadn't worked with in a while. I don't know. I mean, it's a super complicated, intricate gimmick match. So I mean, I'll gladly let it slide. I don't think that I can judge her work based on this one match alone. I need to get her in a singles match with somebody of significant length and see, okay, do I like this girl's work or not? But I didn't think I saw enough of it to really make a judgment call, so I'm not going to make one. Julia Hart was in. She's been so good since coming back. Love her. She did some spooky stuff. Willow was in there at one point too, and she looked great because she always does. She had like a little moment with Statlander that was like, yeah, it was like old times kind of. But what I will say is that they probably should have leaned on that more as a character point. Be like, instead of just having them looking at each other and smiling, acknowledging more that this was a reconciliation moment, or that it's like I'm smiling and then I'm reconsidering smiling at you because, oh wait, I'm still mad at you. Like they were still smiling at each other right before they went up from that spot and started hitting each other. That was more like a competition. It was the same complaint that I had last week with the triple threat match. Like they didn't treat it like there was still like Willow still had an animosity toward it. They just treated it like competition.
Yeah.
And it's like, I wanted more from Willow, which is, I hate saying that because I love her so much, but like I wanted her to be more angry and hurt by Stat's past actions and not be so ready to work with her again. But I mean, the work was good. Harley Cameron came in with her brand new banger theme music, and she was super over. People loved her. She was great. She played into the finish, which that doesn't surprise anybody because Harley Cameron doesn't have a single win in AEW yet. So the fact that she was in here to take the pin should not surprise anybody. But they got to it in a cool way, I think. Like for as soon as as soon as Julia came into the ring, Julia and Hayter were all over each other, in and out of the ring and everything. Like anytime they had an opportunity to beat the crap out of each other, they did. But by the time that and Tony Storm had come in at this point too, and she was doing doing her amnesiac, not amnesiac thing, and it was working, and Harley Cameron comes out, and she looks like she's going to she walked up to Hayter and got a hate breaker, the Uranagi backbreaker. But Cameron ducks the haterade, and Julia Hart mists her, the black mist in the face. We don't. It didn't look like it was meant for anybody else either. It looked like it was supposed to be to Cameron on purpose, which I think was an interesting story beat. Like, I don't think that was meant for Hayter. It didn't look like it was. Like the angles were all wrong. Julia, who's very good with her facial expressions, looked very deliberate. Like I think this was in storyline in kayfabe. I think this was intentional. But yeah, she got the mist in her face. Uh, uh, Northern Lariat. But Storm is here. Like she crawled and she rolls up Julia for the win. Like, so she kind of Julia looks really strong because it looked like she was in a position to win the whole thing off the mist and the Northern Lariat, but she gets rolled up by Tony, and the right woman goes over to face Mariah May in Australia. Ultimately, it was good. It could have been better, but I thought and it could have been longer, and it could have. Honestly, I would have, if I was booking, I would have booked it to be like 30, 40 minutes and open up the show and showcase nearly everybody in the division. Like this was a showcase match, and to a degree it worked, but I would have preferred it to be more. Give me more. That's what I want. I want more. That's all I want, really.
Yeah.
Main event was Moxley versus Hobbs for the world title. Uh, Hobbs looked amazing in this. Like I mean, you can really, really tell that Mox loves this kid because he went out of his way to make Hobbs look like he could hang with the best in the world, and he did. Like it was great, and it showed a vicious side that baby faces don't usually get to. But it really works against Mox because sometimes if Mox is going to go there, you're going to have to go there just to defend yourself. But he went all Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield on the guy and bit his ear, like gushing blood from behind his ear, which I'm sure was a cut. But the blood vessels back here on your ear in that area are they're so small and thin and numerous that it doesn't take much
As I
back there.
He took out the ring, and it was planned. Like he told him to rip it out.
That I didn't know.
And
it's very Mox.
That amount of blood, for sure.
But that is very John Moxley. This is a guy who nearly had his nipple ripped off in a ring before. And yeah, if you read his autobiography, he'll tell you that story. Yeah, it was yeah, there was a lot of blood. that puts a new wrinkle. I didn't know any of that stuff, but yeah, it was like poof. It was bloody. It really put Hobbs over as like this just killer baby face. They've gone out of their way to make him look pretty darn good since his return.
Yeah.
And this certainly contributed to that. Finish came with shenanigans. Marina cracks Hobbs in the face with the briefcase behind the referee's back. And, 1, 2, Paradigm Shift gets kicked out of. What?
Yeah.
On Dynamite with a guy who was not anywhere near the main event scene, like at any point in his career, that's an endorsement.
Mm-hmm.
That's an endorsement. But he still loses when he's choked out by the Bulldog.
Yeah.
With the Bulldog choke. But that's okay. Because he didn't tap out. He passed out, which in kayfabe terms is heroic. instead of cowardly. That's not the way it works in the real world, people. If somebody has you in a submission hold, please tap.
Yeah,
If you
that's
can't escape, please tap. Save your arm, save your brain cells. Do whatever you have to do to protect yourself. There's no shame in submission in the real world, but in wrestling, tapping is cowardly.
yeah. You better.
So after the match, Death Riders jump Hobbs and uh, they rip the knee brace off and stuff like that. But Rated FTR makes the save, although it took way too long to get
Way
there.
too long.
Way too long. It was like what were they doing? I somebody on Blue Sky posited that maybe the Death Riders had laid a trap for them in the form of old Bret Hart matches, and they were just watching those and got distracted. Uh, but yeah, uh, but yeah, it was ultimately it was a good show. I do have to circle back around though and talk about that segment.
Oh, I hated it.
Yeah,
I hated.
um, I'm gonna reiterate what I said about Jeff Jarrett on my TV. I don't want him there.
It.
I don't want him there, and this stuff, this kind of stuff was not what I had in mind when I said that. Okay, to be clear and to be fair, this kind of stuff was not what I intended, but it doesn't hurt my case.
Oh no.
Yeah, this in the year of our Lord 2025, we don't need to be making jokes about each other's mothers being sex workers. I don't think that's appropriate.
I
I
really.
don't think it's necessary. I don't think I think there are better ways to get heat, but if it was a heel that was doing it, it would be fine as long as they got their comeuppance for it later. I'm not opposed to that. This was the baby face doing this. The baby face absolutely should not be making your mother's a horror jokes. Okay? Absolutely not.
And your girlfriend is a whore joke.
Oh yeah. Like yeah, that too. Like it it was it was trying. It was one of those segments that, as a wrestling fan, if I was introducing somebody to wrestling for the first time with this show, I would be embarrassed.
Yeah.
I would be embarrassed. Oh, it's not usually like this. Like
Oh yeah. I can't. Oh.
I
Oh.
this segment too took way too long. It actually took longer from front to back than the women's gauntlet took in its entirety by
Yeah.
about a minute. They could have cut this to a 5 minute backstage segment or whatever, given more time to the women's gauntlet. They also could have cut down if they were going to go with the DQ finish for Christian Cage and Hook. They could have made that a lot shorter too. If they were just going to go with the DQ anyway, they could have just done the first part of the match where Hook was just whooping him and have Cage immediately get disqualify himself. And in fact, that would have served his character even more as a coward. And then given more time to the women's match that way too. So I just there was some really good stuff on the show, but it was good. The good was really good, but this was not. The bad was real bad this week, and I don't want to focus on the bad, but like everybody is talking about this segment for a reason, and I'm not going to shy away from it. It was
No.
bad. We should not do anything like this again, and we should move on.
Yeah.
Should move on.
Terrible. I don't say this that
Leave it
often.
in the past. Leave it in the past. Don't bring it up again. Don't put it in any video packages for the eventual matches they're going to have. No, don't do any of that. Pretend it didn't exist. Move forward.
Yeah. I don't say this that often these days because a lot of stuff is good. This was the drizzling shits, y'all. If you need an example of what the drizzling shits are in wrestling terms, this segment for 12 and a half or 13 minutes was the drizzling shits all over Wednesday night.
And for the record, it wasn't in the delivery. It was in the content.
It was in the content.
It,
Yeah.
it was in the content.
Both of
This
them
kind of stuff.
way better than that.
Yeah, they are. And this is where they decided to go. I don't know whose decision that was, but it was not a decision that was an intelligent one. are a wise one, and I hope they veer away from that as quickly as possible, and just let it be. And that's all I'm going to say about it
Mm.
because I don't want to dwell on it.
Yep.
With that said, what time is it? It's time for the morning, baby.
It's time for the Morton.
If you're wondering where else you can find the Smark Foundation podcast, you can stream our show on Pandora, Spotify, and nearly anywhere else you normally stream your podcasts from, including our home at rss.com. We're also on YouTube, featuring not only full episodes of our show, but individual segments from each episode for easier content digestion. For any of those outlets, just type Smark Foundation Podcast into the search bar to find us. If you'd like to interact with us directly, we're very active on our new social media home, Blue Sky. You can contact the show at smarkfndnpodcast.bsky.social for general pro wrestling or podcast comments. And if you want to get to know us each a little bit more on a personal level, Aaron's personal account is at aaronsmark.bsky.social, and Adam's is at adamsmarkfndnpodcast.bsky.social. If you'd like to further support our show, you can visit our shop at smarkfoundationpodcast.printful.me to purchase various merchandise with our show's logo on it. Wear your SFP t-shirt or hoodie around town and spread the word about the show that strives to bring fans together around what's great about pro wrestling today, brought to you by a couple of everyday elder millennial wrestling fan dads. Now back to the